back to Directors and Donuts. We're back. This is my friend Kaylee.
Hi, guys.
Today we're going to jump in and we're going to chat about a shoot that we did recently and how we utilized AI, how Kaylee utilized AI to kind of help pre-production, production, help communicate ideas, and different stuff like that. So first, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. I'm Kaylee Bailey. I'm a director in Nashville. I've been here for like 8 years. I started as an assistant director on indie films and then kind of moved to Nashville, started making spec commercials, and then started getting hired to do the real thing eventually. So it's been a long journey to get to being able to make something like this. So I'm happy to be here and happy to have done this with you guys. It was great.
Yeah. Glad you're here. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin. I'm the technical director here at Gear 7 and ARC and Shift. I'm also a cinematographer. And on this specific project, I was the virtual production supervisor. So we did this shoot here in the studio. We did some stuff on our robots. We did stuff on the LED wall. This scene you see behind us right now is one of the scenes that we used utilizing Unreal Engine. So this is a little old school jewelry shop, kind of office-y thing, which ended up looking super dope. So let's dig in. We got a little PowerPoint here.
Oh, great.
Kind of talk about this project. This is for Ross Simons Diamonds, and they grow fake diamond, not fake diamond. They grow.
Their whole thing for this project was lab-grown luxury, which is, lab-grown diamonds. So the big thing was showing that lab-grown diamonds are the same quality as mined diamonds and are better for the environment, better for like people in general. Yeah. And so this project was aimed at showing that, and they wanted something very high concept, and so that's what we gave them, and so that's what I pitched. So I wanted to go, they gave you kind of general parameters of like, we want high concept, we want to show how it's different than mined diamonds. Maybe we start in a mine, maybe we end in a showroom, but that's kind of what we're thinking. And so I was like, well, if that's what you're thinking, then that's what we'll do. And so that's essentially what I pitched. And
that's how you make commercials, everybody.
And that's how you make commercials. Just give them exactly what they asked for and say that it was your idea.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the big things, too, that they wanted was a cool transition between the diamond world, like where we would showcase like the macro diamonds and like the regular world. So a big part of that was planning out and designing our transitional shot as well. So that being said, AI was such a helpful tool because it was like, how do you like transition through a diamond, and into this like macro world of the diamond. So I kind of started calling it like the eye of the diamond. And so that's kind of what we pitched as part of this spot, was like taking you through the creation of one of these diamonds, but then also for your like macro montage, getting like a cool transition out of it. So, yeah.
Sweet.
So
this is it. Let's take a look, and then we're going to kind of break it down, show how we did it. Ready to go.
For too long, high-quality diamonds have been too expensive. With 70 years of fine jewelry experience, Ross Simons knows luxury and value. We now offer lab-grown dream diamonds you can actually afford. Discover real brilliance at fabulous prices. Luxury or value? Why choose? Explore the lab of luxury at rosssimons.com.
So that was like many hours in pre-production. But the other thing that I forgot to mention too was that we were using a probe lens for those big movements. So going from a medium wide of that jeweler guy into literally, millimeters from touching the diamond. It was crazy because I was like, you can't even see a gap there. Is it touching it? And it was still in focus. It was crazy.
Yep.
So that was, I think, maybe the most challenging part. I thought that the world and the wall was going to be the problem, but really it was just getting those freaking robot arm moves.
Robots, man.
Jeez. So it was like, let's do all the hardest things. Let's use a video wall. Let's shoot macros. Let's do it on a probe lens, and let's put it on a robot and like do it in a day. So,
And Kaylee pitched that to me. I was like, I'm so in. Let's go. Yeah, it was. We did 2 days.
2 days.
Eventually.
That's
Yep.
right.
So we did a day of just all the diamond stuff on the first day. So all like the tight macro stuff. That was
And
all.
pre-light for the.
Yeah, we pre-lit the wall. We did a little diamond world kind of over here in the middle, and got all like the tight macro shots, the pretty sexy diamond shots with the sparkles and all that stuff. And then the second day we had talent in. We got all of the cave scene, this scene, and then the showroom scene at the end.
Yeah.
So let's kind of walk through a little bit how you got storyboards, where you got those, how you built those, and I'll just comment on how amazing it was to kind of have a coherent, fleshed out idea from a director. And I was just like, oh, I got it, great.
So all of these images were pulled from not Midjourney. It was from this thing called GenCraft, which it's like what Canva is to AI or to Adobe Illustrator. It's like the dummy version of Midjourney. And so, because I just didn't, Midjourney like freaked me out. And so I was like, I
It's a
don't
bit
know
of
how
a
to
pain.
use it. You know, I don't know how
Yeah.
to make it customizable. So GenCraft was like very, very user friendly. You could use it on an app. It was very easy. So I, subscribed to it for like a month and then generated a ton of these images. And it did, it did a pretty good job. Obviously, a lot of trial and error to get it to where it is. And it's the same kind of thing as Midjourney, where if you don't say exactly the right words in the exact right combination, the exact right order, it doesn't give you what you want. So it took a lot of fine tuning. I probably spent like 60 hours on what you're gonna see before I even booked the job. So that's kind of like a bummer part of this industry is like you're gonna spend, a full working week plus more. Like there were nights that I was up until like 2 a.m. getting this done before it was due. So yeah, a lot of work. Thankfully, we booked a job. But
Yes.
so this like pre-pro deck and this pitch deck is kind of what I use for a lot of different pitches. And I think if you talk to directors in town or directors anywhere, they have like a template and a format that they use. And so this is just what I found works for me. But I think one thing that you don't really talk about very much as a director is how much time you spend in the pitch process and how much you need to know how to design something like this, because this is what gets you jobs. It's not your work, it's not all of that. It's like, how well can you pitch, and does your work align with what you've pitched, and can you achieve it? And so
Yeah.
that's kind
But
of
that's usually like the second question.
Yeah,
That's like the
it's the
follow-up
second.
question.
Yeah,
The
it's
first
the follow-up.
one, I mean, I fully attribute winning this job to the deck that you made, the work you put in to actually. One of my old bosses and mentors said like one of the hardest things is to show people what you're gonna show them, to show somebody who can't see what you need them to see, what you want them to see, and so things like this. And I think this is one of the best uses of AI is to just more efficiently communicate. And so we're able to like not just efficiently communicate to the client what was in your head and what you knew that we could achieve, but to also communicate to us, to department heads, to crew, very clearly what you wanted to achieve and what we wanted to look like. And it just made it so easy and so efficient. And so, and on one side you're like 60 hours and you didn't even have the job booked. That's insane. But at the same point, that work is what got the job booked.
right.
Is what got it and made it efficient and easy during production for us to pull it off.
Yeah, and this was thankfully during that time last year that was just a dark hole that nobody was working. So it was like, well, if there was going to be a time to spend 60 hours on something, it was that year. So
Very true.
so you can see, so this is like the next stage of this, like pulling out and then starting in the cave, and then we have like our helmet drop on the ground, And then being very, very specific even about what direction she's walking and that kind of thing helped client a lot in the visualization of this. And I thought I didn't put an arrow there, and I see it now. I was like, I should have put an arrow right there, but I did. And so she walks into this space, which is what you see behind us. And then that shot of that jeweler is just pretty damn close to
It's pretty darn
what
close.
we did.
Yep.
And you can see like it's got like the haze in the background and the same color tone and the same color temp. So giving Justin these images and giving our VFX team these images, they were like, oh, we got it. We know exactly what you need to make. And so the work is worth it. It's just a lot of work.
It is, yeah. And the cool thing is, like, a lot of times we'll get, like, as a DP or running the technical side of stuff, we could get like a Pinterest board and be like, here's what I'm thinking. There's 400 images, or like a bunch of Instagram photos all kind of smashed together, and be like, okay, I think I get it. But when you do the work ahead of time to be like, combining this lookbook with a storyboard, to where this is not just the shot and the framing I want. It's not just the camera movement that I want. It's the look, the feel, the aura of the scene, the lighting, the haze, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You get that dialed in, it makes it so much easier to execute.
And Nathan Thompson, who is our DP, had these boards on his iPad, like, he had his iPad hooked up to the C-stand on his monitor. And so anytime that we were lighting for something and testing, he had these images pulled up and would light exactly what I had pitched on the deck.
Yeah.
So, which was great, because part of the thing too that client is balancing is like, okay, you pitched this great thing, can you pull this off? And I think that will be the next version, or the next step in using AI and all these tools, is that everybody's going to start doing it, but not everybody's going to be able to execute what they pitch. And so, so then some of this stuff, like I said, with AI, it's finicky because it misinterprets things, or it can't do hands, which this one is actually fine, but like things that it can't do,
He's missing some fingers, but
he's
it's
missing
fine.
a couple fingers, but like the specifics of things, there's still moments where it's like, you got to go old school, you got to Photoshop the thing. And so this is like poor man's Photoshop version of this, like, just do it really quickly.
Oh, you're talking about it looks great.
Oh yeah, this is so real.
Yeah, I can tell.
So then, you have like this step, and then the zoom in through, and then on to the next page. I'm just walking you through this. I don't know if this is helpful or not, but yeah. So then the transition became like a whole part of this. That I think the transition was the one thing that was the least clear in the pitch. Was like, what are you gonna do now? And so, because there really wasn't anything out there like what I was trying to do, and so that's also a challenge. And in this case, even having AI was not like the most helpful thing in the world, because I couldn't get it to do it.
Right.
So
there's
limitations for
there's
sure.
still, and I hope there always is, this level of mystery of, as a creative, having it in your brain, you say, like, I know what I want it to look like. I have enough experience and tools and friends that I think I can achieve it, but I can't necessarily like get it out until I get everybody in the same room with all the tools and everything we need to actually do it.
Right.
And so it's kind of, people talk about the mystery of like shooting film, and like the only person that really knows, I say this as a DP, it's a little ego-y, the only person that really knows if the shot worked and if it looked good was the DP looking through the eyepiece, who knows how the film works, know how it's going to show up, knows what the light levels are. There's that mystery, and nobody knows until the next day at dailies that it worked. And so it's almost like we're still, thankfully, still finding these little bits of mystery in the process.
Yeah.
Where we still have to tell a client, I've shown you a lot, I've given you the vision, but you still have to trust that we're going to pull it off, that we can make this work, that it's going to work in a cool way, and you're going to like it.
And eventually, I think you start to gain like little trust tokens with client the more like throughout the day that they saw that what was showing up on screen was exactly what we pitched. Like by the end of it, they were just up there not looking at anything.
Oh yeah, I don't think I saw them the whole second half of the day.
Set. Yeah, they were just up there working, and
they
every
were like,
once
I'm
in a
gonna
while
go do
would
some
look at
emails,
monitor
and
and
go
be
do
like,
whatever.
yeah, looks great. And I was like, okay, well,
Great, we're just gonna keep going.
cool, we're just gonna keep going.
Yep.
So then we kind of got into the macro stuff, which this is not what we ended up going with. We kind of went with like a bokeh thing, and the diamonds, like the macro shots themselves, were the only thing that we didn't shoot on the wall. I mean, technically we shot it on the wall because that was behind the diamonds, just
Right.
turned off. So it's like, we shot it on the wall.
We tested a
but-
few different things. We had, we tested with some LED content in the back, and then we also tested with some practical, glowy, shimmery little. It's like
Nathan had like board like a net that had sequins that were like this
big chunky sequins on it, and you hit it with some light and it sparkles and gives you kind of that bokeh look in the back, and gives a little bit of movement to it and stuff. And so we tested that. We tested on the wall with similar like LED content on the wall, and just kind of liked what the little sequins gave us better.
And speaking of mystery a little bit, there was always the like, are we, do we have everything we need to pull this off? And I think when we were doing the macros, we got there and we were like, our table is not going to work for this. It's like not big enough because our art director got something that was like the right texture, but it was maybe like this big. And I was like, it needs to be like this big. And I went out into the hallway and was like, can we use this thing? So there's like,
That's right.
there's like whatever greets you when you walk in is what we ended up using, because we were like, I guess this is what we have, this will work, and you'll never know, but yeah, that was what we used. So there's still a little bit of like fly by the seat of your pants, no matter how much planning that you put into it.
Right. You can put in all the planning in the world, and you have to pivot on the day and say, this isn't going to work, but that welcome desk out there, that will work.
That will work.
And so we grabbed it and pulled it in here, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Texture was fine. So yeah. So those are kind of our macro shots, and then we transitioned back through the eye, which again, you're like, what is that?
Right.
Like.
Yeah, and I think on set we were talking like, well, at the end of the day, this is a bad like DP production thing to do. Be like, I don't know, put a little posty transition on there, make it go, and then pulls out and work perfectly.
Like.
Yep.
If we had to hard cut, that would work too. But the macro shots were arguably harder than doing any of the like 3 different scenes that we had the next day.
Yeah.
And 3 is a lot. Like if you're doing any environment on here, 3 is definitely pushing it. Like 2 is doable, 3 is like, ugh.
Yep. And it kind of like, in chatting about like virtual production stuff, like what you come into a lot is like, if you look at it right now, like it sort of looks like we might kind of be in this room, but what sells it is practical art in front of the screen. So having, in that shot, we have the guy at the desk, which was a real actor and a real desk and real all that stuff. And then we have virtual elements in the back. And then we add foreground elements between the camera and the actress, so we kind of pass by a real thing.
Yeah.
Things that add layers to the scene.
Yeah.
And so just one person, just us in front of a screen right now, doesn't sell as much as if we had some stuff here with us, we had some stuff in between us and the wall, and we had some stuff in between the cameras and us. And so a lot of what it is like if we have enough prep time, I can hit 2 buttons and the scene pops up on the wall. But then it's all the dialing, all the art, getting it dialed in perfectly, get the lighting just right to where it sells it, doesn't give away the gag.
Yeah.
And so doing 3 scenes in a day was a lot. And one of them included a bunch of dirt.
And there was a lot of dirt
We had
that
a lot of
Amanda
dirt.
Alberto had to bring in here. I think it was literally like 2 tons of dirt
Yeah.
that she and her team just shoveled in here.
Yep.
But
The dirt shot's my favorite.
the dirt shot is great.
Her in the
Like, you
cave and
never
dropping the
know.
helmet, I love it. It looks so good.
Well, and that was in speaking about kind of transitioning into the virtual production side of things, working around what limitations we have on this wall, and all walls, I don't know that any wall really doesn't have this, is like not being able to see the seam. And
Right.
so that was always like, in my pitch deck, you'll see that there's never a full body shot,
Right.
because specifically I was like, I know from talking to Justin, from talking to Nathan, from having done this before, we cannot show her feet. So managing client expectations on that is really important too, in talking about producing what you pitch, making sure that like we were in communication ahead of time, being like, can we pull this off while I'm in the middle of pitching, and in that process is really helpful. But that's kind of like the interaction and like shifting the work that you would normally do in post to what you do in pre-production. Like that's something that AI does, is kind of just shift the load forward.
Right.
And so those conversations were really, really helpful. But, you know, and in talking with, going back to like production design, so Amanda Alberto, who did fantastic on this with the dirt and the props and stuff. So using what she had available is how we also designed this wall, was to make sure that Amanda also had props that would match this.
Right.
And so there's a lot of interaction between the VFX team, me, art, just to make sure that it was all really cohesive, and that's really what sells it, because you can't really do one without the other, which is nice, because it's like, okay, it's not all, it can't be all the wall, like it'll look fake. And so it's nice to be like, those elements still have to work cohesively. And that was maybe one of my favorite parts of the process, was when we were doing this scene, was like trying to finesse all the stuff and having Amanda back there looking over Justin's shoulder being like, can we move that desk? Can we push this way? The lamp I want in the corner. And then Justin's able to like move it around. And then she'd tell her team like, okay, move that desk this much to the left. And like, you're kind of doing that collaboration. So I think that that was like one of my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things about virtual production and doing things this way in general is that you're doing a lot more collaboration. At least what it feels like. Like, as a DP, I'm getting to collaborate with the VFX team that is normally just in post, and like once you finish the shoot, it just disappears into the ether until it comes out, and you're like, oh, interesting. But with virtual production, like, because you're filming your VFX in camera, you have to communicate ahead of time. We're having to do more conversations ahead of time. We're having to collaborate earlier, which is great, and that we can use tools that help us communicate more effectively, communicate ideas better, and then be able to collaborate in pre-production and then in real time during production. Lets us get to the point to where we can burn our VFX into the camera and be done.
Yeah.
That we get it right the first time, and we're not having to fix things later. We're not having to make any pivots or do any changes. Things were communicated effectively. Client loved it. We're able to execute effectively on what they loved, and deliver exactly what we said we were going to deliver. And makes it a lot less stressful.
Is that they had a deadline too, that they were like, we had to get it out before Thanksgiving, I think. And so we had 2 weeks to do post. And that's another element, I think, of the wall that is important to mention, is post and color.
Yeah.
So Brett did an amazing job with the color on this, and when we were looking at the dailies, I was like, oh God, it looks like a wall. I was like, I don't know what happened. Like, it looked so good in camera. What just happened? And so then looking at it and like afterwards, I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't know what to do. And then Brett just fixed it and was like, don't worry, I got it. And then blended it super well. And I was like, oh, thank God. So there's also still that element of like, you do have to fix it in post. Like, it's not like straight out of camera into Premiere and now we're done. Like, there was a lot of work done to make that actually look good. So thanks to Brett for doing that, because I felt so much better after having him work on it, because it looked fine, but it looked like a wall. And so that was like, that's a weird thing that you have to take into, and you want your colorists to know how to do, is to be able to understand why it looks wally and fix it.
Yeah. Brett and I've done a lot of work together on this wall to figure out, okay, here's where it really sings, here's where we get the best work, here's the lighting ratios that work the best, and here's where it absolutely falls apart, where it doesn't work. And so, because it's still such an early technology, like, black levels aren't great yet. There's still so many things that we're kind of like doing workarounds to get it. Like, will it eventually get to where you can just film it and it looks perfect? Maybe. Probably not. There'll probably always have to be some kind of skill involved to achieve a really, really great image. But a lot of it's just been like, how do we use these new tools, find the lane that they work really well in, and kind of like finesse it a little bit this way, and then get to the point to where I can know on set and be like, I've been here before, I know this, and we can fix that in post. And also to be able to know the reverse, to say, I've been here before, I know that, and we cannot fix it in post, so we have to do this now.
Which is a tough thing that if any of you do virtual production, lighting takes about twice as long. And it's nice that you're in this contained space, but I did not account for that in my scheduling and AD brain. I was like, oh yeah, we need like 2 hours to light. And Nathan was like, 6 hours to pre-light for sure. And I was like, oh, wow. And so there's also the big challenge of that is like, you have to keep the light off the wall. And so can you light everything in your scene and not have any light bleed onto the screen itself? Like, it's a whole thing. So if you're ever doing it, word from the wise, like plan double the amount of lighting time that you think you need to start the day. Because it's a lot.
Or it's going to look Wally.
It's going to look Wally. Yeah.
Let's see, what
So
else we got
into
here?
some of the design, these are images that Joel from Fourth Crown Studios, who did our VFX, Joel sent me this image. So this is based on those earlier shots in the storyboards. That's what this is based off of. And you can see, like, he nailed it. Obviously, it looks incredible. And then, like, he's got, like, all this texture and all this cool design and the water on the ground. Not that we're ever going to see that, but like, you know, it was nice to have. But even that with our production designer was like, can you find the right color dirt, you know, that matches this? And so that was kind of a thing on the day, is when they were loading in the dirt, being like, okay, the dirt is not as red as our set. So now we have to adjust the color of the background to kind of meet in the middle with the color of our dirt. And that was great because we could do it.
And that's great. So it takes 2 seconds to change the color of the dirt in Unreal Engine versus hours to go
like,
buy different dirt.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. And this is all exists in Unreal Engine. So like on the day, like I went in and we kind of relit the cave a little bit, moved some of the lights around to where we get light peeking through the back, but not revealing too much. So it falls into darkness, but it's not too dark, so you can see what it is. And so a lot of times what we'll do is, like, similar reasons to the lighting taking so long is that it takes so long because we also have to light it virtually. And so we can do some of that in pre-production, like we'll do rough lighting passes and stuff like that. But on the day, we're still moving lights around in the virtual scene, just like we're moving lights around on set. And we're like moving rocks, like some of the rocks stuck out a little bit too far, so you can just grab them, scoot them in.
Which is very cool. It's
That's
a
very cool.
very cool part of the process. The other thing with that was haze and like smoke, and being like, making sure that you've got elements in the virtual wall that you match in real world. And for the cave, that was dirt and haze. And for this one, it's obviously, Amanda built one of these posts that you see for us to dolly past. So that was nice to have. Again, helping sell any of your virtual production, you really rely a lot on foreground elements. And so that was one big thing that we did here. Obviously, these lamps are like the most cliche film production lamp of all time, but you can find them. And so I don't know that we actually ended up having any in our virtual.
Yeah, I don't think we ended up using them.
We maybe didn't use them in the real world, but Amanda had them. But I was like, I just don't want to see those. Like, I don't want every film person to watch this and be like, oh, those freaking green lamps.
Nice default lamp you got there. Yeah.
So anyway, I think we ended up removing some of those.
Yeah, and a lot of this, like...
Oh, nope, there's one right there.
Oh, yeah, we did. Like, there it is.
I love those lamps, but they're just in everything.
They're in everything.
So,
yeah, and there's some, like... I mean, if you, like, look at the scene, like, this, like, big tool press thing, I think we ended up moving it out of the scene.
Because they were like, what is that?
What is that? That's not a jewelry thing. And we were like...
Looks cool, though.
Joel was like, I don't know, look for, like, old machinery and put it in there. So there's, like, you know, some of that stuff to just kind of add texture. So you come into the scene with, like, here's a bunch of different options. The same way you'd come in with your production designer and your set deck team will come in and be like, all right, here's our truck full of stuff we like. And we, like, put it in. We try it, like, nah, let's try that other one. Then we kind of shift things around and move it around. You do the same thing in Unreal. You do the same ideas, like, okay, I don't like where that bookshelf is. Let's put a little one here, move that there. We did a lot of moving desks around in the background so that we got the right angles. We, like, once we found our shot on our practical desk, we then needed to line up a virtual desk behind it so it looks like they were in a row in the office, and, like, getting everything kind of just lined up just right.
And then the sun went out. And so remember that? We
That was weird.
lost like an hour because And this is, again, the technology, like, you're thinking, we're saving so much time because we got these 3 sets and no company moves and we're all right here and it's great. And then suddenly it's like, why is the sun flickering in the background?
Yeah.
Like, what's the matter with the sun? And so then you have to like stop down and be like, Justin has to fix the sun.
Yeah, and so we ended up having to like change how we did the sunlight in the scene, because a lot of times in Unreal Engine, it's a real-time renderer, so you tell it, here's where the sun is, and the physics engine in the thing reacts the way the sun would react in that thing, so we had to like, I think we ended up adding lights and doing it almost like blacking it out.
You took the sun out and put in like huge 4K fake lights or something.
Yes, something like that.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up finally working, but that was like all right,
Yeah.
this is, you know.
You still, even with new awesome tools, you still run into fun production challenges, just like on anything else. So you're like, if you're trying to shoot the scene, be like, oh, it looks perfect, and now there's a rain cloud coming. What do we do now? Are we going to wait? Are we going to change? Are we going to do this? We're going to do that. There's still going to be pivots, even if you are trying to control as many things as you control, try to put as much pre-production time in, trying to use tools that help you be more efficient. You're still going to run into fun pivots.
Yeah. Just what we love. And then the next one was just really easy. That was, I think, our easiest one.
All right, Nathan, you do the clicker now. There we go.
Very, very simple. But strangely, hardest one in color. Brett, would you say that that's right? It just, we couldn't quite get it. Like it was the most Wylie of all the ones. I don't know why, but it just had like a greenish. I think it was because we used the probe lens on it, and we just couldn't get it to. The probe lens on the wall was challenging.
Yes.
And everything looked more wall-like.
Yeah. Probe lenses are challenging in a lot of ways, mainly because like the fastest end of that lens, and this was the new probe lens, is an f8. So your depth of field is still like a lot, especially when you're wide. When you go in tight and you're this close to the lens, your depth of field is razor sharp, which is why they build the lens that way, because it's made to be tight. When you're trying to get that massive move on it, which is what we needed, it's like it can do it, but as soon as you come out wide, your depth of field is going to see a ton of stuff. And you don't have a lot of compression because it's an ultra wide lens, and so you see a lot of the world, and it was just that like, all right, we're riding on the edge of the knife on if does this work or does this not. And like, I think we landed it, and Brett nailed it. And like, it looks, to a DP, it looks way better than a probe lens should look.
Yeah,
if you ask me.
It does. That's really true. But this one was really simple. So so that was kind of our whole process through the thing. And I did this side by side to show because I also not only put together the storyboard, I also cut an animatic in my pitch. And so they knew it was like, I did the voiceover, I picked music, which I actually think the music I picked is what we used in the final version. So it was like even dialed down to what music we were going to use. And sound effects was like a big thing that helped sell the whole piece. It's like a different conversation of like that like wildly helped. But so you can kind of see
what little side by side between the animatic you built and the final piece, which I think is pretty cool to see.
For too long, high-quality diamonds have been too expensive. With 70 years of fine jewelry experience, Ross Simons knows luxury and value. We now offer lab-grown dream diamonds you can actually afford. Discover real brilliance at fabulous prices. Luxury or value? Why choose? Explore the lab of luxury at rosssimons.com.
So it's pretty close.
Nailed it.
Yeah. But that's kind of the level of like pitching and work that it really took to land something like this. Because it is getting like harder and harder to get jobs because everybody is pitching on everything now. And last year was a really weird time in film, I think, for everybody, but it was especially weird as a director that you're pitching on these jobs that normally you would not have the level of competition you have, But then suddenly you're pitching against like guys who've won Oscars, you know, and
Yeah.
you're like, what is Guillermo del Toro doing pitching on this Nike spot, you know? And one of my friends who lives in Atlanta was like, I had this agency friend call me and go, dude, you would not believe the 3 directors that are pitching on this $100,000 spot. It is ridiculous. And he
Yeah.
didn't tell me what names they were, but he was like, they are huge directors.
Yeah.
And so it was just so dry. And so that level of pitching was like the only thing that I had in my control to do to get work. And
And
it's
it
something
worked.
that I've like, and it worked. And
Yeah.
now it's like carried over into the other things that I pitch. I'm like, well, if I do it at that level, then, you know, hopefully you end up booking the gig, but a lot of times you don't. And so it is sunk cost and time, and it's just part of the game, which I hate and we all hate, but it's just one of the
Yep.
things that you have to do. So
Yep. Maybe there'll be a day when directors can be paid to pitch.
that would be great.
That'd be great.
But
Because it is a massive amount of work. And I think this
Massive
is
amount
a perfect example of when you put in the work, it not only makes the clients feel safe with you as a creative, but it also, as your crew, it makes it so easy to just go in and execute even stuff to the highest level. Even when we're using robotics, we're using LED wall, we're using so many different, very complex, sometimes unpredictable tools. We're able to like adequately see what we need to do and nail it.
yeah. So, and a lot of people, took a lot of people to get it to where it was like from the pitch to the screen. So,
Yep.
so yeah, that was
Sweet.
kind of that project. So,
Yeah.
in
Awesome.
a nutshell.
Well, we're going to take a little bit of time for some Q&A, and then we'll hang out and eat some more donuts. If you guys have any questions, you can kind of raise your hand. We got a mic floating around. We can grab you real quick.
Hi, Kaylee.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
Is this going to this? Okay, I can hear myself barely. All right. What of those 60 hours? Is there like 3 or 4 components you would say like that you spent the time on? I mean, was it the pitch deck though?
It was mostly the deck, but really it was the images and getting exactly what you want out of the AI generators. That it was also my first time doing this. I think now using Midjourney, I'd be a lot faster because I've spent some time learning it and trying to figure out how the prompts work and how to get the most like effective like phrasing to get what I want. And I didn't have that knowledge with this. So I think that there was some that was like user trial and error for that. But generally it was just getting the images exactly like what I wanted to. And you even see in some of these, it's like, you know what, I could not get it to not put a helmet on her head, you know, like I could not get it to do it. I was like, all right, let's refresh, let's clear the history, and then like reprompt, and every time it would put a helmet on her head and not just in her hand. So at some point I was like, forget it, she's wearing a helmet. And so there's that kind of stuff to get that down, because my deck itself and what I use as a template has been that way for a while, and I use that same kind of template and change the colors and change the branding to match whatever the client's coloring and all that stuff is. So that takes like a big chunk of time too, also mitigated now by AI tools where you can just automate that. But yeah, it was mostly the images, and then getting the animatic dialed as well was like, I spent a lot of time in Premiere.
Yeah, well,
too.
your attention to detail is very evident, and also how you communicate with the client. It feels like you understand how to head off certain concerns that they may have.
You've got to, and I think that that's a great thing to call out, is just the more that you work on like the client side, you know what they're going to come back at you with and what they're going to say, that like if you didn't say specifically or you didn't show specifically, they would be like, well, is she wearing a helmet for this?
Right.
Are we planning on having her in a helmet? And so you just have to be like, she's not going to be in a helmet. So I think like the more, like what you're saying, the more that you can mitigate that ahead of time for client, the easier it's going to be to get your project greenlit and made.
Yeah.
So
100%. Any other questions?
Still on the same theme of like managing client expectations, you mentioned that there was a scene where she's like full body, but you had to say that's not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, the client would say, why don't you put her full body somewhere else? Like, let's do this one shot in a real mine.
Yeah.
So how did you have any pushback, and if so, how did you manage that?
I think giving them the caveat right up front when I sent in all of this stuff was like, she cannot be shown full body. We can't do that because, and I think one of the things with clients is also not saying can't, not saying won't, not saying it's not in our budget, like not saying that, but trying to sell that like your idea, your solve to not have to do that is actually better for them.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the trade-off, was like, you know, you go into it with the like, absolutely we can do that. However, if we do it on a virtual wall, you're going to get twice the amount of value because we don't have to do any, like, we don't have to move at all.
Right.
And so going like, you know, if they came to me, which I think that might have been a conversation at some point, well, why can't we show her full body? We really want to see what heels she's in. And me being like, well, yeah, we can absolutely do that. We will have to do that in a real location, which totally fine to pivot, but here's the benefits of doing it the way that we have originally pitched. And I think that like you're going to get 3 different locations versus maybe only having 2.
Right.
And kind of phrasing it that way, where it's like, we'll give you what you want, but you'll lose something else.
Comes out of communication. How are we communicating what they want to hear, but also is what's going to effectively execute the project?
Yeah.
And like almost this level of educating of like in a kind way, saying like, okay, I know where we need to land. I know what we need to do to execute this for the amount of budget that you've given me. Like, how do I make it seem like it was your idea in the first place?
Right. And definitely being like a yes, and also
Yeah.
this is the downside to what you're picking. So,
Bingo.
yeah.
Yep.
I
Any
actually
others?
have one more question, and I'll let go.
Oh yeah.
Were you involved in a post-production process at all? And if so, like, how was the revisions process after you revealed V1?
Yeah. Well, the post process was easier on this one because it had to go so fast. Like
Yeah.
we had to turn it around in like, Brett, I think you had a day to color it. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying not to speak out of turn. This was not that long ago, and I can't believe I don't remember. But I think
It
I
feels like it was
actually,
a
I
long
think
time
I
ago now.
actually cut it, and so
I thought you did.
yeah, I think I cut it. Now that I'm thinking about it, it feels like a blur. But yeah, I was very involved because I was doing the post on it. So,
But also, like, we'd already done the work, so we knew
Yeah, so it
the
was
boards
just-
were done, everything was there. There was no extra. There was no, oh, let's just shoot a whole bunch of extra stuff and see if we can make it work in the cut. It was we shot exactly what was on the boards. We shot exactly what was there.
which is nerve-wracking because I think you're used to, especially in Nashville, where a lot of the work that you're doing is lifestyle. A lot of it is, you know, music video. It's not necessarily narrative, where if you didn't get the shot, then the thing doesn't work.
Right.
And this is not narrative, obviously. It's very high concept. But this was one of those things that it was like, if this didn't work, if we went too long, there's really no safety net for
Right.
us in post. Like, it just won't work. And so thankfully, it worked exactly as it should have. But
Yeah.
it was like, it had to be exactly 30 seconds or like 29 frames and 29 seconds, 23 frames. Like it had to be that. And so the post process with revisions was nice because there really wasn't anything for them to pick. Like they were very picky about her inflection, like what she hit with like
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Ross Simon's Diamonds, da da, like the cadence of it. It took so
man.
long.
We
for
did
us.
do so many
We
takes
did
of that.
so
Oh my
many
gosh.
takes.
Yep.
And we, even after we did as many, because it started getting pretty ridiculous, where it was like, all right, we're on take 10. Our poor actress is like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, no, you're not doing anything wrong. They just like want something very, very specific, and you're not doing that. And that's not wrong. It's just not what they want. And so then eventually I was like, guys, we got to move on. We can go take her in the back and do wild lines, as many as you want after this. So that's what we ended up doing, was taking our actress while we were resetting. I think they spent like 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like just having her go over and over and over and over, so that in the end they could be like, do we have one where she goes up on diamonds? And then I'd have to like go through our like little, wild line and pull diamonds and put it on top of. So if the sync looks out, I think just in general because of the speakers and the lag on this, but if you watch it closely, like you'll see some of the words are not at all lined up with what she's saying, but it goes by super fast so you don't notice.
That's right.
So all that to say, the post process went very, very quick, and they didn't have the opportunity or the time to give me many notes, which is great.
And yeah, like within 2 weeks, I think one of the guys on our team was at home with his parents in Florida and sent a video in the group chat of like, hey, this is on TV right now. And it was a broadcast spot, and it was on.
It was on like during the Macy's Day Parade or something.
Yeah.
Like it was like a big broadcast spot.
And we were all like, we just did that.
Wow,
And
that
it's
was
cool
done
seeing
a day
it.
ago.
I know, it's cool to see it kind of close, because a lot of times like we're in some projects right now and be like, all right, we shot that 3 months ago and we might see it in another 3 months. But it's cool to see it, turn around that fast. And that is one of the benefits of that much pre-production, of virtual production, piling all these things together that lets us execute it quickly, get it through post quickly, and keep clients happy.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
We got one in the front.
Yeah, up here in the front.
With your experience using AI, what is your opinion on the ethical use during pre-production, and if there is or isn't a place to use AI?
There it is.
You
want to go first?
Big question. So for me, I feel like pre-production is one thing. To get your idea across, I think that's a whole different thing to use it in something that you're being paid to put out into the world. So that part of me is like, AI is absolutely training on things I've made. So like, sure, I'll use it. But I think it becomes very, very murky when you're cutting corners in the actual thing.
Yeah.
And being like, I don't have to pay an artist for this because I can just generate it and use it in my project. So if I had been like, I'm going to AI generate a 3D background and throw it in the back, like that was kind of murky.
Right.
And we even had that conversation with Joel. It was like, we have to be careful with this because I don't want you to use any of the elements that I created in my reference. Like you have to create those separately, like on your own by hand, because otherwise we get into that weird like yikes.
Yeah, I agree. I think this project it kind of rides that line that I'm happy with ethically of AI can be a great tool in the toolbox to help efficiency and communication, to help like get ideas out of her brain and into my brain, like very helpful for that and good to be used in that way. I think when it comes to replacing artists, and you could argue we replaced a storyboard artist with this.
It's true.
You could, but also there are so few real talented storyboard artists, and they're all working on Marvel movies and stuff like that, where they should be. So I don't want that career, that artistry to die, but at the same time, like on a legitimately like budget on this project was small and scrappy. Like we pulled together a lot to pull it off. So like using tools like AI to find those efficiencies. I think things like, using AI to help, optimize my calendar and like sort through my email for me, like things like that are great. I think and especially as artists, that we protect what we are creating and that we protect the integrity of the creative process, to say like, I'm always going to value something made by a human brain that experiences human emotions, that understands the human experience and can like creatively put that into something, is always going to have more value to me as a creative, as an artist, than it would be to just like, I just need a thing, get it out. That being said, like we did have a production recently where we were caught in a pinch, a location fell through, we couldn't get it, and so we very quickly generated an AI background, threw it up, pulled off the shot, and it worked perfectly. And so like it's similar to like all the other production tools we have in the toolbox. There's good tools in the toolbox, use them in their appropriate ways. Don't let everything become a hammer. Even with virtual production, like I don't tell every client that comes our way, like, we should do that in the studio, we should do it on the stage. And I don't say that you need a robot for everything, because you don't. Like, when you need the right tool, that's when you use the right tool. Like, you know, like we said, like big wide shots, very hard to pull off on VP stages unless you have a very large stage and a very large art budget to like do a full complete floor that goes all the way up against the LED wall. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that, it makes way more sense to spend like 10 grand, take your crew out on a splinter crew and go get the shot on location. And you get your wide shots and you can do your tight shots on the stage. Like, finding the right tool for the job. And I think AI, as it develops, I think we might hit a plateau sooner than we think of what it's capable of, but finding the best lane for it when it comes to production. And I think that that lane, to me, and I think to a lot of people, is like helping us be more efficient and more productive in what we are creating, and removing some of the monotonous, annoying parts of our job.
Which I would have spent, many more hours finding these images, because I still would have boarded it without a storyboard artist. Like, they're just, I'm not going to pay a storyboard artist as, me pitching on a project. So if AI had not been a thing, and this is what we all did before AI was something that you could customize these images, I would have gone and photoshopped all of this stuff. And I would have found like a close-up of a necklace and would have gone through and found those images. So I think that that's where I'm like, if you're not like replacing the job of an artist and using the cheap and easy way out, that's where I feel like it's okay, But I could be wrong about that. But I will say, when this process was starting and AI was like such a huge help, it made me feel better, because I, as a director, was like, there goes my job. Like, all of last year was like, I'm out of work. That's it. Like, my job doesn't exist in 5 years. And through this process, I was like, oh no, like, I'm still going to be needed. Like, AI can't replace me if I know how to use it. And I think even like the freak out of last year when OpenAI or Sora came out with all of their stuff, which is still scary. Like, things on Instagram will pop up and I'm like, they did all of that with AI. But there's still, and we all say this and we hope that this is true, there's still something soulless about it. And I think that especially, Gen Z and younger kids these days can just tell, and they can see it faster than we millennials can. And I think that it's just so easy to see that it's still fake. It's close, but like, it's still, something is off about it. So it has not replaced as much of our industry now, even as much as I thought it would have a year ago. Like, so.
And I think that's still, I agree. And I think, but there's still this balance I hope that we all kind of stay focused on and keep continually try to look at, of saying like, okay, is it helpful or is it hurtful? Is it helping my process? Is it making me better at my job to execute? And does it help me do what only I can do as a creative, and help, because that ultimately, that's what's never going to be able to be replaced. Theoretically, we'll see, of like my experiences, my humanity, the lens through which I see the world, that I can focus that creative work through that. The things that you bring to a project as a director are things that none of the other directors that I work with can bring, because of your unique experiences and how you see the world. AI can replicate what it's seen before, and you can get some cool stuff out of that, But at the same time, like, in creating a genuinely new look at something, a genuinely new story or a way of seeing things, like, the human brain's the only thing that can like still do that well. And so I think as we can bring along tools alongside to help us in that goal, to help us, focus on what only we can do and execute what we can execute. Like, it's going to help us achieve more and cooler things and be more efficient at it. But at the same time, still maintaining the creative integrity of, like, this was made by humans who had something to say about something and to bring value into the world and not just to create content.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Any other questions before we wrap up and eat more donuts? Nope, more donuts? Great.
Great.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Feel free to hang around for a little bit. We're going to hang around, chat, eat some more donuts, drink some more coffee. Thanks, guys. Thanks,
guys.
Kaylee.
Thank you.